Hello and welcome back to Desperate Living, and today it's time for another look at some second-hand books that I've got. This is quite the unboxing. In fact, here's one of the 3 boxes that these books came in. So you can see it's quite a lot of stuff. We're certainly not going to get through all of it today, probably not through all of it, because some of it, I guess, won't be all that visual for you at home. But this is a massive haul of books. Not sure exactly how many, but we were looking at something like 29 to 30 in that particular box. So, you know, maybe work it out from there. But basically, somebody was offloading a big chunk of their personal collection, and I took it all. Can't tell you who it was, for obvious reasons, and as I say, we're not going to show you everything because there's a whole mix of stuff and not all of it is necessarily going to be all that visually exciting for you, but let's go through as much of it as I can. We'll do this in chunks because certainly going through 3 boxes of books on one video would make that quite the longest thing we've ever done. Probably too long. I think even the biggest fan of second-hand books would probably get a bit bored. So let's get going with what I have on the table in front of me. Starting with some Pulp Fiction, the classic Baroness series. Not sure if you're familiar with these or not. This is one of the most infamous series of kind of action spy pulps of the 1970s. There were a lot of those around, of course, but this one is certainly up there for its levels of outrageousness. I think there's about 6 in the complete collection. This one is from, what year do we have? 1974. The Ecstasy Connection, or as it says in here, torture by ecstasy. So you probably get a feel for what's going to be happening here with the Baroness there with her machine gun and her dogs. I assume they're her dogs. Obviously I haven't read this yet, but thrilling stuff. There is a more extensive feature on the Baroness series on the Desperate Living website. I'll put a link below, you can check that out. Now here's something exciting, and something which presumably will help me make a whole new living. How to read the aura, practice psychometry, telepathy and clairvoyance. What a fantastic cover. So, I imagine there's good money in it, being able to do all these things. You know, if anybody wants their aura read, any kind of clairvoyance, it seems like it's a pretty easy thing to pick up. Although it's quite a chunky book. Anyway, I'll let you know how the lessons are going. This is from 1971. It actually seems to be a collection of a few different books. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, I'll give you an idea of how my psychometry lessons are going, if you remind me. Perhaps a lot cooler is Burlesque, The Baubles, Bangles, Babes, story of a unique American institution. This is fantastic. Comes from 1964, when the burlesque scene would still have been, you know, a going thing, probably on the verge of being replaced with go-go girls and topless bars, but you know, burlesque as was probably still popular. It's got a fancy little kind of fold out poster. A few paperbacks seem to come with these back in the day. I've got a couple of Robert E. Howard novels of all things that have got similar fold out images, but as you see, full of great pictures. I'll give you a few more examples. But you know, I love the idea of this being of the time. Obviously this is long before the whole neo-burlesque scene and the bastardization of the very word to come and mean, you know, what it grew to mean in the like 2000s certainly. Great back cover, great front cover, glorious. Something else glorious, El Cine de Luchadores. This is a Spanish language guide, nice and slim, fascinating cover, to masked wrestling in movies, which, you know, is one of those things that still hasn't, I mean, maybe it has, there's books about everything these days, let's be fair, but you know, I'm not sure that there is still the definitive guide out there to the El Santo and Blue Demon and all the other masked superhero wrestlers of their age. Obviously this is in Spanish and it's a pretty slim volume, but you know, I'm really glad to have this. Completely different subject matter, kind of the fantastically named Pearl Binder and the fantastically named book Muffs and Morals. You might be wondering what that's all about. Well, it's about fashion and the differing ideas of morality in fashion. Great image there to give you an idea. This is from 1953, so you know, we can still say that it was still a time of rather strict morals. There are some great images in this. And possibly artwork by the author. Who can say? Yeah, this one looks like it's both informative and a lot of fun. This one may be less fun. Man into Wolf by Robert Eisler. An anthropological interpretation of sadism, masochism and lycanthropy. One of those things you might think not always connected with the other two. This is actually the text of a lecture. So the text itself is only about 50 something pages. And the rest of it is notes. So what date does this hail from, are we told? Quite a lot of these old books are suspiciously quiet when it comes to publishing dates. No publishing date on here, and of course no illustrations as you would think, but it sounds like a fascinating subject. Quite interested to give it a go. I mean, at 50 something pages, the actual lecture will be pretty easy reading, and then it's a case of just digging into the notes after that. Gershon Legman's Love and Death, which is a study of censorship, and this hails from, as you can see, it's pretty old and battered, and yeah, this is actually a 1963 printing, but it's a 1949 book, so an interesting concept to study censorship of the time. Chapter titles: Institutionalized Lynch, Not for Children, Avatars of the Bitch, and Open Season on Women. Most of which, quite frankly, sound like they could be entries in the Baroness series. So I should say that we're going to have this is a very cursory look, obviously, at all the books that I've got here, but many of these will be subject or part of the subject of future videos, either here or on the Overlooked Hotels. But as with a lot of our other book and Blu-ray unboxings, this is a very quick look at what we have here, and we'll be delving deeper into quite a few of the subject matters or the individual characters behind these books at a later point. A prime example being Maya Deren and Divine Horseman. I'm sure a lot of you must be familiar with Maya Deren's work, the movie, if not the book, of Divine Horseman, an astonishing work of art, and somebody who I've had on the list of subjects to be covering for quite a long time. We just haven't quite got around to doing it. Getting this book is a nice little reminder, and fantastic. This is one of those books that I've wanted for a long time and seemed to just always slip me by. I'm so very glad to finally have it. Here's an oddity, the Occult Technology of Power. So you might be wondering what this is about. This is from Underworld Amusements, so it's a kind of a modern reprint. This originally appeared in 1974. This is from 2016. Let me read the review on the back. Written as if it were a set of lectures from the central philosophers of a master conspiracy. Their personal viewpoint is rational egoism, but they want to keep this wisdom of this perspective secret, since it is impossible to exploit a person who maintains a self-conscious, self-interested frame of reference. So basically this is how to gain power, how to manipulate, and how to either stop it or join it. I'm not sure how thoroughly serious this is, but it's a nice little booklet and should be quite a fascinating subject to explore. As of course is Robert Anton Wilson's Illuminati trilogy. This is the Illuminati Papers, so it's essentially a kind of add-on to the Illuminati books, full of kind of articles, features. This is a book that had escaped me previously, so again, glad to have this, and once again it's a subject matter that we'll be exploring in more detail in the future. The Church of Satan by Blanche Barton. Well, obviously we're going to be doing more stuff on the Church of Satan, or indeed my collection of occult books that are somewhere on the shelf. You probably can't see them. Blanche Barton is a part of the Church of Satan and famously was the author of the biography of Anton LaVey, which, to be honest, was a bit of a hagiography. It was far too in love with its subject matter, which is fine, but maybe not the picture of the great man, but yeah, maybe not quite as objective as it needed to be. Nevertheless, I'm quite looking forward to getting into this. This is a bit of a missing link in my kind of LaVey / Church of Satan collection, so yeah. Here's another curious, I guess we call it semi-occult, occult / feminism, the feminine universe, by Alice Lucy Trent. This is an edition that, I've seen other versions of this that have like a full colour cover, so this is maybe a slightly more independent edition. It's from the Golden Order Press, who I'm not especially familiar with. This is really interesting stuff. Here is a book that does challenge the whole system from the outside, from the standpoint of the original feminine wisdom that has not been spoken for centuries. If you let it, it will turn your world upside down, or rather turn it back the right way up. So this is a discourse on feminine power, primordial female knowledge. Beautiful cover, really nice. When is this edition from? Do we have a publication year? No, we don't. Very impressive, and maybe of a similar bent. Probably not. Of a very different type of female power. Children of the Void by Miss Regina Snow, which apparently was the subject of a 3-part Channel 4 documentary. Don't recall seeing that, but I will be seeking it out. And this is very much a part of, this is from like 1996, and it's very much a part of that kind of 90s retro BDSM fetish culture that existed at that time. Things like Delectus books, other publication as well. I mean, this is published by the Wildfire Club, and yeah, there were quite a few of these groups that really kind of specialized in resurrecting vintage BDSM or creating a new vintage BDSM. Very much based, about life in the 1950s, as it says on the back here. This is a whole culture of people who will dress and behave as if they were in the 50s, complete with, as it says here, 1950s clothes, canings and all. So it's a fascinating and wonderfully eccentric kinky culture. Lastly, from this side of the bench, we have The Erotic in Film, part of the Welt des Eros. I'm sure you don't need that translating too much, but this is a gorgeous vintage study of eroticism in cinema. I mean, it doesn't, again, this one doesn't have a cover date, but it's clearly kind of, say, mid to late 60s. It doesn't get into anything beyond that era as far as I can see, but it's chock full of brilliant images. I mean, it's very much a photo-led book, but not just photo-led. I mean, there's plenty of text in here, obviously all in German. What a fantastic volume. It's the kind of thing that is just, I'm going to be going through for weeks, if not months, just finding great images and just nicely packaged as well. I mean, obviously, as you may have noticed there, the slipcase is a bit torn, but I think given the age, that's not too bad. And it still keeps the book safe. So let's go through what we've got on this side, starting with the whopping Ouija's World. Now, again, I'm kind of making that assumption that you will know who Ouija is. Maybe you won't. I don't know. I mean, it's possibly a generational thing. I'm always surprised at what people know and what people don't know. Ouija was a photographer who, you might argue was, on the one hand, one of the fathers of paparazzi, but that's really doing him down. I mean, he's just somebody who captured reality in all its forms. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Crime scene photos. But just general life as you wouldn't normally see it in photography. You know, he's one of those first people who really went out there and just got it, you know, showed it as it was. I mean, I could show you plenty of images here. Ouija is somebody who we are going to do, again, more coverage of. This is, you know, certainly not the only one of his books that we have, and, you know, have documentaries as well. So he's absolutely the subject matter for a forthcoming documentary. And, you know, I think if you're unfamiliar with his work, you're going to find it a really interesting story. And if you are familiar with his work, then you know why it's worth seeing. Here's a curiosity. No idea what this is. The only thing I know about this, it's introduced by Sandy Robertson. It kind of tells you that on the cover. It's some kind of book collated zine that is connected in maybe the loosest way with Aleister Crowley. It's full of great imagery. Let me show you a little bit. You know, I've no idea what you're seeing here, obviously. But yeah, this is a really interesting looking volume from Orange Box Books. I'm not familiar. Maybe if you are familiar, if you are from Orange Box Books, you can let us know. This isn't particularly old. 2011 is practically brand new by the age of some of the stuff here. And it's also got this. What is this? Wickedest crossword. Ah, there we go. Crossword puzzle competition for readers. I imagine thoroughly expired by now, so I won't be bothering to complete that and send it off. But yeah, this just looks amazingly cool. I'm really interested. It's kind of fascinating and a little bit depressing. Let me just get this all back in the bag. Just how much of this stuff from kind of early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, just kind of passed me by, and I don't know why that is. You know, this is all the stuff that I would have been eating up, but I guess, you know, life had taken me in other directions for a little while, or, you know, I had other distractions. A lot of things just went by without me noticing. A real shame. And, you know, it's good to catch up on all these things. There's a couple more that we'll come to here as we go along. But first of all, something of a much more vintage style, classic French fanzine from the 1960s. Do we have the date of this one on the cover? Oh, wait a minute, no, 1964 to 1965, number 10 and 11 anyway. Those of you who are familiar with these old zines from the kind of first era of fanzines, I mean, this is great. Again, it's all in French, but chock full of fantastic imagery. And, you know, although I imagine that this is the kind of thing that, you know, all the obscure stuff in here has now been done to death everywhere. But nevertheless, it's really, really interesting, really well put together, and you know, there are still images that I see just flicking through here that feel like, you know, I haven't seen those elsewhere. So, and this is, you know, this is the kind of thing where it's extensive coverage of a few things. So we've got William Castle, Roger Corman, Terence Fisher here. You know, the kind of in-depth articles that you would get in these publications, we kind of lost to a large degree. And speaking of fanzines from Europe, here's a collection. This one covers Coming Away, but that's okay, that's fixable. Terra Fantastic from Spain, and this is early 70s publication. Or maybe, you know, maybe at this stage for this edition, this is a compilation of the first 6 editions, so there's quite the possibility that this is like 1960s. Oh no, 1971, because the original covers are still in there. So it's interesting that Spain obviously was under the time that these, here's another 2, at the time that these were being published was still very much under the cosh of General Franco and the fascist dictatorship, but was also a country that really loved its horror films, and although they were often censored for the Spanish market, even Spanish films would be shot in 2 versions. Clearly there was the market for this kind of fanzine. Again, I don't want to be opening these up too wide because I'm not sure how fragile they are, but there seems to be a lot of stuff in here that is fascinating, including, you know, a lot of coverage of the Citrus Festival and ads. You see here, get your poster for the festival. I'm sure that'd be quite an impressive thing to own these days. Still in foreign language, French book on kitsch, and as you can see, it's a chunky book. I think a lot of British and American books on kitsch tend to be, certainly the ones I've seen, tend to look down their noses at it. It's kind of one of those weird things where it's like they'll write a book about something that they hate. You know, I'm talking about the authors, or, you know, they might just be doing it because they've been commissioned by publishers and they want that nice juicy fee, but don't actually like the subjects at hand. Not getting the feel here. I'm getting the feel from this that it's a book written by people who know what they're talking about. And whoops, now we can see that it's obviously got loose pages, so let's be careful how we open it up. But yeah, interestingly, there's a lot of coverage of the erotic kitsch as well, which is one of those things that tends to be brushed over somewhat in a lot of those aforementioned British and American books, but here would seem to be delved into at great depth. But yeah, this is obviously quite fragile. Again, probably needs a bit of a repair. But here's something much more recent. Outre Journal. This is from 2012. So again, something that, you know, that kind of early 2010s, I was clearly just not paying attention to what was going on, because, you know, how this slipped by me, even though it's covering everything that I'm into. Give you a quick flick through. I mean, it's all the kind of stuff that I guess we would have been covering in fanzines back in the 1980s, back in the 1990s, but now is in book form, because I think the market for fanzines, as I found myself, has just diminished somewhat, and people want something a bit more physically substantial and colourful. And yeah, this is great. I'm assuming that this is the only edition. I don't know. Anyone knows anything about Outre Journal, then by all means let me know. And something else that's emerged in that kind of retro chic era pad, the Guide to Ultra Living, which seems to very much place it, I'm guessing, kind of mid to late 90s, in that whole kind of lounge culture and easy listening world that was popular at the time. Just trying to see if there's a publication date that I can find here. Yeah, 2000. So yeah, at the kind of tail end maybe the easy listening boom. But fancy little cover there. And this is all about groovy pads that you would my word, yeah, places that you would love to live. Obviously, when we finally get around to relocating and have more space, then obviously I'll be wanting to bring you desperate living videos from a room of this nature. So this strangely reminds me a little bit of Adrian Maddox's classic cafes, and it's kind of capturing a world gone by and celebrating it. I mean, obviously I haven't read it yet, so I don't know what kind of take it has on things. Hopefully it's pretty positive and loving. Now here's an interesting thing. It's another Channel 4 series that I didn't ever remember seeing. Far Out, the dawning of New Age Britain. Steve Humphries, who I assume was one of the producers on the show. I've got another of his books, The Secret World of Sex, which was also a TV series. Very good TV series and interesting book. So this, I imagine, will be the same kind of thing. It's covering the rise of alternative beliefs, New Age beliefs, I suppose the early days of wellness, which is interesting because a long overdue interview that I'm going to be bringing you at some point. You can see stuff about witchcraft here, but yeah, a long overdue interview that I'll be bringing you. I won't say with whom just yet. Let's do it first. But we'll be looking in depth about the rise of wellness and that whole kind of strange and often exploitative culture. But there's a lot of fun in alternative lifestyle, and a lot of validity in alternative belief. So I'm not criticizing that. I'm more criticizing the general world of wellness. But let's not get into that. Let's wait till we've done that video, shall we? Finally, some Euro comic strip books. Here's one covering Italian comic strips from 1930s to 1970s. So when was this published? This was 1990. Great cover. It's a slim book, but it's got extensive amounts of text and lots of great imagery too. we really haven't done enough on old comic books here on Desperate Living, but you know, indeed on the Overlooked Hotel, which is potentially, you know, the more suited home for them. But rest assured that we will be doing quite a bit. And here's one on just general erotic comics, basically an encyclopedia of erotic comics. It's kind of interesting, just making sure that there's stuff I can I can show you without having to blur it all out. Let's see what we can manage. What I find interesting is that certainly a lot of European erotic comics and American ones too have kind of slipped under the radar to a certain degree. People seem to focus more on Japanese manga, and this stuff has been kind of widely overlooked. I'm not saying it's exactly ignored, but certainly there's not the same level of attention given to it that you might expect, given its long and impressive history and just how much good stuff there is out there. So, you know, this is obviously again in French, but a good kind of starting point for me, just to not that I don't know anything about this stuff, and we've actually got plenty of it, but you know, sometimes it's good to have a book that will just kind of trigger off an idea and say, yeah, that's something to cover, that's something to cover. And so yeah, expect plenty of coverage of not just erotic comics obviously, but old kind of vintage comics and comic strips in the future. So I think one of the joys of, as I said, of having these piles of books arriving is that they both remind you and they trigger ideas. And so we'll be doing a lot more on, you know, much of this stuff. We're long overdue coverage of fanzines, for instance. So, you know, expect that coming up very soon. And occult books, explorations into filmmakers like Maya Deren, and weird beliefs and philosophies. Again, that's something that we haven't really done that much of, but it's a fascinating world and definitely something that I'm well into, so we'll be diving in very soon. Obviously, if any of these books have kind of sparked more ideas for things that you'd like to see more in-depth pieces on, then just let me know in the comments. I'm fascinated to know what you think. As I've said, there's plenty more of these books to get through. Another 2 boxes worth, even if we take out the stuff that doesn't particularly have great visual covers or images to show you. So expect that over the next few weeks. Obviously we've been a bit slack here on Desperate Living. I am aware of that. You know, things have been happening. There are all sorts of reasons, but we're going to try and pick up the pace again. Try and do something every few days, at least once a week, and we'll be certainly doing a lot more of the book coverage. We've also got some interesting reviews of new releases and older releases coming up, so stay tuned for all that. I mean, if you like this kind of video, then don't forget to give this video a like, and if you haven't done so already, then subscribe to Desperate Living, and while you're at it, subscribe to the Overlooked Hotel as well. The link is in the description, and there's plenty of interesting stuff appearing there. If you like what's on this channel, you're going to love what's on that channel too. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.